Starting in 2026, every new car sold in the United States must be equipped with a system that can monitor your driving, decide you are impaired, and prevent the vehicle from moving. Not slow it down, not alert you, stop it. While you are driving, stop. You did not vote for this. Your congressman probably did not mention it on the campaign trail. It was not a headline. It was 11 words buried in Section 24,220 of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, passed in November 2021. And it mandates that every new passenger vehicle include the words advanced drunk and impaired driving prevention technology as standard equipment by 2026. The technology is real, the mandate is real, the timeline is real. And the implications for who controls your vehicle, what data gets collected while it monitors you, and what happens when the system makes a mistake, those consequences are real too. If this is the first time you are hearing about this, hit like and subscribe. This channel covers the engineering decisions being made inside your vehicles that nobody in the showroom will tell you about. Now let's go through exactly what this system is, how it works, and why the fine print should concern you far more than the headline. The mandate does not specify a single technology. It gives automakers flexibility in implementation, which sounds reasonable until you understand what the two leading implementation approaches actually do. The first approach is passive alcohol detection. A consortium called Driver Alcohol Detection System for Safety, spelled DADSS, has spent 15 years and more than $100 million in federal funding developing two sensor types. The first is a tissue spectrometry sensor embedded in the steering wheel or start button. When you touch it, it sends infrared light through your skin and measures the alcohol content in the capillary blood beneath the surface. No breathalyzer, no test. You touch the wheel and the car reads your blood. The second is an infrared sensor mounted in the cabin that samples the air around the driver's face and measures ambient breath alcohol. You do not blow into anything. The car smells you. The second approach is driver monitoring systems. These are camera-based systems, already present in many 2023 and 2024 vehicles for lane keeping and attention monitoring that use artificial intelligence to analyze eye movement, head position, blink rate, steering input variance, and lane tracking behavior to infer impairment. Not just alcohol, any impairment, fatigue, distraction, medical events. The system interprets your behavior and makes a judgment about your fitness to drive. Both systems feed into the same endpoint. If the system determines you are impaired, the vehicle is required to limit or prevent operation. The exact intervention, whether the car refuses to start, reduces speed, activates hazard lights, or pulls to the side of the road, is left to manufacturer discretion. The mandate requires the capability. It does not specify the ceiling on how that capability gets used. Read that again. There is no legislative ceiling on intervention. The mandate creates the infrastructure, and it leaves the scope of its authority to the people who build it and the regulators who oversee them. Now let's talk about accuracy, because this is where the physics meets the policy. No sensor system operating in real-world conditions achieves 100% accuracy. That is not a controversial statement. It is an engineering fact. The DADSS tissue spectrometry system has been in development since 2008, and it still has not cleared the accuracy threshold required for deployment, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's progress reports. Skin composition varies by individual, and temperature affects readings. Lotion, hand sanitizer, and some medications interfere with infrared spectrometry at the wavelengths used to detect alcohol. The air sampling system is sensitive to alcohol-based cleaning products, mouthwash, and hand sanitizer that evaporates in a warm cabin. Consider everyday scenarios: a nurse who cleaned a wound with alcohol wipes before driving, a pastor who took communion wine 2 hours before the school pickup, or a diabetic whose acetone breath chemistry can read as alcohol on certain sensor configurations. The system does not know the difference. The system makes a probability determination, and then it acts on that determination. The driver monitoring camera approach has its own accuracy problem. AI behavioral analysis trained on population-level driving data performs worse on individuals who fall outside the training distribution. That includes elderly drivers with natural hand tremors, drivers with neurological conditions that affect eye movement, and drivers who are simply tired after a legal 14-hour workday. The system was trained to detect impairment, so it will signal impairment. The question is how often it signals impairment that is not actually there, which populations are affected, and what happens to those people when it does. NHTSA does not publish a required false positive rate for these systems. The mandate requires that the technology be passive, accurate, and reliable. Those words have no defined technical threshold in the legislation. Passive, accurate, and reliable according to whom, tested under what conditions, with what acceptable error rate. None of that is specified. The automakers will define it. The regulators will approve it. You will live with the result. Here is what a false positive looks like in practice. You are driving your family home from Thanksgiving dinner. You had no alcohol. You are tired. It is night. The cabin camera analyzes your blink rate, notes that it is slower than the baseline it established for you during normal daytime driving, cross-references your lane tracking data, and flags a potential impairment event. The vehicle activates its hazard lights and begins reducing speed on a 65-mile-per-hour interstate. The car behind you, traveling at highway speed, does not have time to react. Or you are a nurse leaving a 12-hour overnight shift. Your hands still carry traces of isopropyl alcohol from the gloves you wore all night. You touch the start button. The tissue spectrometry sensor reads a surface alcohol signature. The vehicle refuses to start. You are in a hospital parking garage at 3 a.m. These are not hypothetical edge cases engineered to make the technology look bad. They are the natural consequence of deploying a probabilistic system in mandatory real-world conditions across 280 million registered vehicles, with no opt-out, no override, and no appeal process faster than a phone call to a tow truck. Now let's follow the data, because the impairment detection system is not just a safety feature, it is a continuous monitoring platform. The driver monitoring system camera runs every time the vehicle is in operation. It is watching you. It is building a behavioral baseline profile, your normal blink rate, your normal head position, your normal hand placement, your normal response latency to road events. That data is generated inside a vehicle you own or lease. Under current law, vehicle data generated by onboard systems belongs to the manufacturer. We already established this in the subscription car conversation. But the monitoring data generated by an impairment detection system is categorically more sensitive than GPS coordinates or music preferences. Your driving behavior biometric profile, the one the camera builds over thousands of miles, contains information about your health, your stress levels, your sleep patterns, and your neurological function over time. It can infer whether you are developing a medical condition. It can infer whether you are under sustained emotional distress. It can infer with reasonable accuracy whether your cognitive performance is declining with age. Insurance companies want this data. They are already buying driving behavior data from manufacturers, as we covered in the last video. A continuous biometric impairment profile is worth more to an actuary than a GPS track. There is currently no federal law preventing a manufacturer from selling this data to an insurer, a healthcare company, or an employer. The terms of service you agreed to when you connected your car to the app cover it. You consented when you accepted the update. And there is a harder question underneath all of this that nobody in Washington is asking publicly. A vehicle with a remote disable capability, which is what an impairment intervention system is at its technical core, is a vehicle that can be stopped by anyone with access to the intervention signal. DADSS, the driver alcohol detection system for safety, and driver monitoring systems as currently designed operate locally inside the vehicle without requiring a remote command. The car makes the decision, but the infrastructure required to update, calibrate, and audit these systems over the air is the same over-the-air update pipeline that already exists in every modern connected vehicle. The capability to trigger a disable event remotely once the local disable hardware exists is an integration project, not an engineering breakthrough. It requires a policy decision and a software update. Who has access to that pipeline in an emergency? Law enforcement has already pursued legal avenues to access vehicle telematics data through manufacturer cooperation and court order. General Motors provided OnStar location data to law enforcement in response to subpoenas for years before the practice became public knowledge. Whether a government agency could compel a manufacturer to trigger a disable event on a specific vehicle using this infrastructure is not a settled legal question. It has not been tested in court because the hardware does not yet exist at scale. It will exist at scale in 2026. The legislators who wrote Section 24,220 were thinking about drunk drivers. That is a real problem worth solving. Drunk driving kills approximately 13,000 Americans a year. The intent is not cynical. The intent is genuine. But good intentions do not constrain the infrastructure they create. The Patriot Act was written to catch terrorists. The data collection apparatus it authorized was eventually used in ways its authors did not publicly anticipate. A mandatory vehicle disable system authorized to act on impairment has the same architectural property. The hardware does not know what it was intended for. It knows what it is capable of, and what it is capable of is stopping your car. The 2014 vehicle in your driveway does not have this system. It does not have a tissue spectrometry sensor in the wheel. It does not have a cabin camera analyzing your blink rate. It does not have an over-the-air update pipeline waiting for new instructions. It starts when you turn the key because starting is a mechanical function controlled by you, not a permission granted by a system that is simultaneously collecting your biometric data and selling it to your insurance company. The 2026 mandate is real. The technology is imperfect. The data protections are non-existent. The false positive consequences fall entirely on the driver, and the remote disable infrastructure, once built into 280 million vehicles, will be the most powerful behavioral control system ever embedded into private property in American history. You are not being protected. You are being monitored in a machine you own by a system you cannot turn off, authorized by legislation you were never asked to approve. That is not a safety feature, that is a cage with cruise control. If you want to understand how the same federal mandate structure was used to destroy appliance durability and to inflate your repair bills, that video is coming up next.